I always kind of use the example from Star Wars where where Harrison Ford as Han Solo is about to drive through this asteroid field, and C-3PO, robot is like, do you know what the odds of survival are? And it's like they're basically zero, right? And he says, never tell me the odds, and then he guns it, right? And so that's where I say, from a true making business decisions, understanding like what should you be doing, where should you be going, should you make this investment or not? Those are things that you can certainly leverage AI to help you with, but you need to think about and make those decisions as business leaders and business decision makers, because AI doesn't have instinct. It just has the information that's been fed into them.
Justin Merritt, thank you so much for joining the Cadence. This is our inaugural episode. I'm super excited to have you on. Thanks for being here. Justin, before we get into questions, why don't you take some time and just let us know who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, sure. So Justin Merritt, and yeah, pleasure to be here, Jason. Known you for quite a while, and was really excited when you reached out to join on the first episode of the Cadence. For me personally, I love doing stuff outside, riding around on two wheels, motorized or pedalized. I don't know if that's a word. And then, from a work standpoint, work in financial software industry. I've been working in that space for about a decade now. And then prior to that, worked in finance and accounting. I love kind of solving problems, I guess is the way I'd say it. I love like learning new stuff and trying to solve problems. And currently, I guess about 15 or 16 months ago, myself and a few others, we started our own company. So that's been a crazy journey as we've kind of grown exponentially and really exceeded a lot of our wildest dreams about like the growth and what we could do with the company. And so that company is called TwinSix, and we focus on implementing financial technology for customers of a company called Pigment. So Pigment's the provider of the software, and then we do the implementations and help companies with finance transformation using Pigment.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. I mean, looking up your background, it seems like you've been kind of a lifelong entrepreneur. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've always got to have something. I would say this is the first time in my life I don't really have any. I have one little side thing going, but usually it's like a lot because I'm always, dabbling in stuff. Yeah, I think back to probably one of the businesses that got me in like the most trouble was like in elementary school. I started making stress balls. So I made like, remember, you're about my same age. You probably remember like where you put like the flour in the balloon and stuff. And like, so I made like small, medium, and large ones. And then I created like pricing packages where you could buy multiples.
Get out.
Yeah. And so so it was like every night when I got home from school, I was like using the 2 liters and filling balloons and making stress ball.
Man, so you would have been like a drop shipper if you had been born a little later.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If there was like, because like eBay came around and like internet shopping. I mean, that was probably when I was like maybe in junior high or maybe just right at start of high school. But I got really into that too. I remember there was like you could back in the early days of eBay, it was a lot of like liquidation stuff. So I'd buy like a lot of posters and then I would go and, around school and like sell them to people and like, get the poster for like a couple cents a pop and then sell them for a few bucks. Yeah.
Just always trading. That's so good, man. So this is something that's natural to you. And it sounds like, you obviously you're a CMA, you're an MBA, you have like the pedigree and the background of, going through traditional education and working corporate jobs like you worked for Oshkosh for years, Planful. How has that though, like having those side hustles all the time, like in your experience in building TwinSix, how has that kind of like resonated with you, like almost on like a soul wise? Like I know for me, like starting my own thing, it's been scary, but it's also been like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it. It's certainly insanely like stressful and challenging every day, but like it feels right. You know what I mean? Like I've always loved the work that I've done. I've been very fortunate in my career. I've always worked, places and with teams, and we've done like really awesome stuff and we've worked hard and we've been rewarded for it. But like, yeah, it's just it's just very different when it's your business and you're building it. And yeah, it's that thing of like, actually a guy is kind of a mentor of mine. He said, like, that things have started to go really well when instead of every day getting punched in the face multiple times by stuff that's not expected, you kind of like are able to say, okay, what's going to punch me in the face this week? And
Yeah,
so like
that's cool.
that that kind of transition has happened for us, kind of in the last, couple of months where, things are now starting to really run, smoothly, and we can really start to focus on more like the excellence side of things versus just like constant putting fires out as you're starting to build, a business. And that's been incredible, right? Like being able to take and make that transition. And now it's like really getting fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me in my journey, one thing that I've said to a mentor of mine recently was like, I don't like I feel like I'm finally kind of getting to that hill, like top of the hill to where like I'm starting to feel momentum, but I almost don't want the struggle to stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where you're like, oh, I kind of like, I don't want it to be, and I don't know, maybe like it's funny that we named this the cadence. Like, I feel like cycling, there is that like, you hate going up the hill, but
Yes.
also like, you kind of go back to it and love it. Like, I want to do longer rides. I want to go up farther hills. Like, I want to climb more because yeah, the way down is fun, but like the pain and the sacrifice that it took to get there is kind of like the thing that you get addicted to.
I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're so, like in my head, like I just immediately popped this visual of I used to do RAGBRAI every year, which is like a ride across the state of Iowa. And I think it's been 3 years since I did it, but the last time I did it, there was this crazy, it was like toward one of the last days, and this crazy hill that was seemingly like never ending. But you're absolutely right. It's like, I mean, I remember being like halfway up, and it was one of those windy, crazy, like steep hills, like no reprieve. And you're like halfway up, and it's like people are getting off and like giving up, and it's like, I am not going to do that. And then you make it to the top, and like you get that amazing feeling of like achievement and gratification. But then to your point, like my mind immediately was like, I want more hill,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like, oh, where's more hill? It wasn't like, oh, let's go down. It was like, how do I get higher? Right. Yes.
It's so funny because it's like, yeah, starting a business is like one challenge to the next, but you almost kind of like, for me, I'm like, oh, I had that thought of I don't want this to end. And you're like, well, it doesn't end. It just gets different, right? Like at every stage, the hill is different. There's always hills.
Yep. Yep. And I think like one of the big things for me that I've learned over, my whole career, and even like, being a kid and kind of starting businesses like lawn mowing business and stuff, is like focus is really important. And so that's one of the things as we've started TwinSix and been, growing it, is like maintaining that focus. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about, right? It's that focus on getting to that top of the hill, getting through whatever that challenge is. And then that opens you up to be able to take on more challenge, right? And it's not necessarily a lack of focus, but it's maybe shifting, okay, this focus is really good now. And really, we know what we're doing. So now let's take that next big challenge and really try to work on it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I imagine like the work that you're doing both internally and for your clientele, your customers, like is pretty complex. And so I'm sure that like both internally and like within, the clients you serve, you have to find a way to like simplify things. So I think you guys talk about simplification a lot, but isn't complexity sometimes necessary? And when is simplification actually dangerous for an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think let me start with simplification being dangerous. I think there's a lot of tendency in business to kind of look at and try to like oversimplify everything. And what I mean by that, and I'll go back to like when I worked at Oshkosh, we actually had an initiative called Simplify. It was like the
Sick.
objective was to like make a lot of our manufacturing processes and things like that more simple. And while that is important and focusing on efficiency and those things, what happened was some of the decisions and some of the things that were being made, they actually stripped away the value for the end customer. And so when you think about it from the lens of, sometimes that complexity that we have as a business or that a client has in their business is part of what makes them unique and special. And when we strip away that complexity in the goal of simplification, it kind of kind of like takes away the identity of the company. And so that's how I think of it, is like when we're looking at something and we're looking at a customer's process or the way they're doing something, is this complexity for the sake of complexity? Or does this complexity yield a result or yield something that is actually driving a difference for them versus their competitors or versus other industries, whatever that comparison would be? And then, when we think about simplification, a lot of times that comes into, just I'll use one of the most common examples we run into that, clients for some reason don't think a lot about. You like me have worked in software. A lot of software is like a base charge plus like a charge per user. When they go to plan for that type of expense, they're disconnected, right? They're not connecting that software cost to how many people they have that would use the software. So take like a Salesforce or HubSpot, right? One of the things we always recommend is, hey, let's simplify this. You know what that base cost is, and you have a plan for how many people are going to be in your organization that would use Salesforce or HubSpot. So let's drive the cost of HubSpot or Salesforce based on the number of people that you have, not just based on a guess or a trend of that number. And so in some ways, you might say that's adding complexity because it is a more complex formula, but the result is actually far simpler because now we have a much more accurate output from that versus if we're just kind of guessing, at what that number is.
Yeah. Nice, man. Man, it seems like the work that you guys do it's so like guided, like custom, right? Like I feel like so much of implementing software for FP&A, is kind of like a run and gun kind of thing. Oftentimes with implementers, it's like, hey, here's the software, here you go, have fun with it. But it seems like the approach that you guys take is very custom to each of your clients. Can you walk me through like what's the difference between, TwinSix and someone else implementing Pigment?
Yeah, we focus on, I would call it intentionality, and this comes through in a lot of different ways. But one of those things is very much from the beginning. So when you think about that, someone has decided to purchase Pigment, then the first thing we do is we have a pretty detailed internal knowledge transfer so that we make sure that everything from the sales process is being communicated directly to the resources who are going to work on the project. Then we do a joint, what we call initiation call with the client. That initiation call is where we've developed this starter kit. And so it has kind of all these components, and think of it like literally checklist as well as guides for them of what they can be doing to help make sure that the project can get started successfully. And that initiation call is oftentimes, a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even longer before the project actually kicks off. And then we're having that interface continuously with the client while they work through that initiation material. What that does is it sets us up for a really great kickoff on the project because now everybody knows exactly what the goals and objectives and priorities are. And we have a lot of that information and stuff ready to go. So we can jump right into starting the work on the project and be completely aligned about how the project is going to run. And then when we start the project, we don't just jump in and start building or start implementing. We actually spend almost a majority of the time on a project sometimes in what we call solution design. And so, this, but we have a big focus on user experience. And we think of, everything that we deliver to a client, we think of it like we're delivering an application for the client. And so we want to understand, the users, the user personas. What are they using this? Why are they using this? What's the objective? What are the gaps and challenges that exist today versus where they want to be in the future? And so we're getting into a much more granular kind of level discussion where we're understanding exactly how we should be building that solution, designing what that can look like from an experience standpoint, and then getting into the mechanics of how we actually will connect everything together. I often attribute it to kind of like if you're building a house, you might have a model of the house, you might see like kind of a general layout, then you decide, okay, we're going to do this, you get a blueprint, then you get like a wiring diagram, a plumbing diagram, right? All those things. And that's kind of similar process we take. A more fun example would be like Legos, right? If you go buy a Lego kit, it's got, you see what the end product should look like. You've got the instructions. We're creating that kit basically before we ever get hands on keyboard with the implementation. And then that also speeds the time for the implementation because now we know exactly what we need to deliver and the client knows exactly what to expect out of it.
It's so much about like communication and relationship, right? Like really just showing them, hey, I really want to understand what your end goal is like, and then I can build you a process and work you to that. For me, I
Mhm.
use Notion a lot. I actually have a Notion template that I've started selling, which has been great. Notion is so flexible, which is awesome. But at the same time, it kind of sucks because you're like, I can do anything with it. But if I don't have a clear vision for what I want to do with it, I kind of go like, well, I'm lost, right? And some people have reached out and like, how do I set this up? I'm like, you kind of have to know where you want to go. And that's why I've given like guides and worksheets where it's like, hey, here's how to define that. And then you can kind of work yourself back. I know that you guys are a big pigment house, and obviously we, worked together previously at Planful. You are, used to work for Vena. I'm sure you have experienced a lot of other platforms. What is it about pigment that really just like, you're like, this is it. This is the one right now. I mean, right now, and maybe it might be the one forever, but compared to like Anaplan and a lot of the legacy platforms, what is it about pigment that really just like makes you so excited about the future of FP&A?
Yeah, shameless plug. I wrote a little article about this, so maybe the readers or listeners can reference that too. But essentially, what it comes down to is architecture. And so when you look at effectively all of the different players in the market today, the architecture of their solutions is largely based on technology that comes out of the 1960s and 1970s. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, just because of age, it's a bad thing because technology has significantly evolved since that time. And one of the things that comes into play is when you're starting a software company, you have some choices. And when you have choices, you often also have cost constraints. And so the technologies of the past are very inexpensive to set up and build a product using. And so that's why you still see even new entrants into the market today using those same legacy technologies. At the foundation of the core, Pigment is different because it uses a fully modernized architecture, which means that you get kind of all of these advantages that come with just using Pigment that aren't even possible in those other platforms because it's a fully modern stack. And one of the ways that it's really hard to kind of conceptualize this for people, especially if they're not deeply technical. And so one of the things, AI is obviously like huge buzz. So one of the ways to kind of say it is like Pigment is literally designed for AI, right? Like from the ground up, the way the system works, the way the data is connected, the way the data is stored, it is directly built to take full advantage of what's available in AI today, as well as what we see as kind of the future of how AI works in business. And that for me is like huge. As you know, I've
Yeah.
been working with AI and business technology for almost my whole career, and definitely a huge part of what we worked on together at Planful. And so seeing that was like, whoa, this is going to change things in a great way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you're a huge believer in AI, and it obviously taken some time, right? You weren't just, I think a lot of finance pros are a little apprehensive and feeling like maybe not yet, we'll see how it kind of shakes out. You have 20 years of experience in the space, not only finance but or not just software but finance in general. What innovation in financial technology do you think's been the most overhyped, and what's been underappreciated?
I would say in the current landscape, probably AI, most overhyped, not dissimilar from other places,
Yeah.
because it's still very immature, right? Like there's great thoughts now. You're seeing products come out that do some really cool things, and you're starting to see that landscape develop or that picture develop around how we can actually use this kind of new technology in a great way for these types of use cases. And so I think the hype, like I talk to CFOs and heads of finance every day, and almost every single one of those calls is like, we have an AI initiative. We need to buy software with AI. And then I ask, well, what are you going to use it for? And they're like, I don't know. And that's why I say it's like hyped, right? Because clearly it's like made it to the boardroom, but there's still not that kind of clear definition about how to get value. That's evolving and changing. So I think that's exciting. The equivalent to that is like I remember when cloud first came out, and we had like at Oshkosh a huge initiative to start moving stuff to cloud-based solutions and migrating from on-prem to cloud. And it was very similar. It was just a mandate that came down from the board. They were like, we've got to get on the cloud. And it's like, okay, well, why? Like, what's that going to do for us? Well, I don't know, but everything we see says you should be on the cloud. The cloud is the future. Now, you fast forward, right, 10, 15 years, yeah, that's where we're at, right? Like almost nobody has on-prem stuff anymore. And I think that's going to be a similar type of cycle with AI. It's like, the technology is there. People are starting to formulate those ideas and get it. And that's probably the most overhyped. Um, yeah, underhyped. I think,
Copy paste, right?
yeah, unfortunately,
Underappreciated.
yeah, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the guy who invented it passed away recently. I don't know if you saw that,
Dang.
but yeah,
That might save me so much
yeah.
time.
Yeah, I know, right? And like, it's funny that story. It's funny you bring that up because, like, of course, I've read like about that, but you're like many things, right? It's like the story of that is it got buried away, nobody cared, and then finally, like, I think probably somebody at Apple or Microsoft, right, was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and they started using it. It's like the mouse, the mouse
Yeah.
and email and stuff, right? All invented by Xerox, and then their Xerox is like, "Oh, we do copy machines," and then
See?
like here we are today. Like, what would you do without those things?
Yeah, totally. That's so funny. I remember someone at my previous role mentioned like, I'm not the copy paste authority or something I'm a CPA, not a copy paste authority or something like that. It's just funny because it's like a lot of the job is like copy, like it's this, okay, from one place to the next, copy paste. I mean, with so much of even what you do in marketing is like copy paste. And I know I do think the advancement in AI, especially with things like MCP and being able to connect different types of applications, has been awesome. Like even in my own experience, experimenting with Claude, I'm not sure if you have your own kind of pet
Yeah.
LLM, but I think that's my brand for sure. Is like I love Claude, and them opening up through their model context protocol into different applications has been awesome. Like I've been able to build websites, like full copy, everything just by prompting my Claude instance, which is insane. So it feels like AI is really like getting everywhere. And with that, what aspects of financial management and accounting should never be automated or AI should not touch?
Well, you've heard me pitch this before, but I think of it in this way. Like, the reason that businesses stand out or are successful is because of taking risks, right? If you look at, it could be simple decisions like the iPhone, right? It's not a simple decision in terms of how they got there, but simple in terms of, yeah, the market needs a phone. We want to do a phone, right? Or complex decisions in like, hey, we want to start a business. We want to enter into this market that isn't super mature. Is it worth it? Is it worth the risk? Those are the things where, AI can certainly help. It can certainly help you understand what the risks are. It could certainly help you evaluate. But, I always kind of use the example from Star Wars where where Harrison Ford as Han Solo is about to drive through this asteroid field and C-3PO, robot is like, do you know what the odds of survival are?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like they're basically zero, right? And he says, never tell me the odds, and then he guns it, right? And that's the kind of the example I always lean on because yeah, like the gut feeling and the instinct and intuition that we have as people, our brains are incredibly powerful. We can process so much stimuli and access memories and information and stuff and create a decision instantaneously, right? And maybe someday AI would get there, but it's definitely not there yet. And it's definitely not going to be there anytime soon. And so that's where I say, from a true like making business decisions, understanding like what should you be doing? Where should you be going? Should you make this investment or not? Those are things that, you can certainly leverage AI to help you with, but you need to think about and make those decisions as business leaders and business decision makers, because you're going to know better what your risk tolerance is and what you're trying to get to and have a better instinct about it. Because AI doesn't have instinct. It just has the information that's been fed into them.
It's just probability, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man, I don't
exactly.
know. I'm a risk taker for sure, so I'm just like, shut up, robot. I'm
Yeah,
doing this thing. Like I'm going to
exactly.
that asteroid field.
Yep.
I am more of a risk taker, and I know it's something I need help on. And I'm sure, a financial minded person like you could help me with that. But one thing that you focus on is balancing revenue growth with positive cash flow and contribution margins. Why do so many businesses get this wrong?
It's because it's really hard. Like, even for us at TwinSix, it's a constant discussion and that we have to be tuned into because, you know, you can, like think about TwinSix as a service business, right? Most of our revenue comes after the prospect has decided to go with pigment, and then we're doing the project. But in order to grow, we have to hire delivery people ahead of that curve. It's really risky, right? It's really a tough decision, which means that, you have a choice. We certainly, have margin on our projects, but do we take that margin and, use it for paying ourselves more money, or for, buying new computers, or taking, fun trips or something,
Yeah.
or do you take that money and reinvest it in continuing to grow that organization? And so you have to have kind of a double-sided belief. You have to believe that you can actually go sell and get the business to fill that capacity, as well as that, you can basically figure out the cash flow component to make it work. Because otherwise what happens is you stagnate, right? Because if you're just focused on that kind of cash flow piece, or you're just focused on revenue, you kind of end up kind of getting locked into corners. And so that's where like contribution margin is a kind of a great way to measure things, because it helps you understand how much of each additional kind of project we're doing, or each additional unit that I'm selling, how much of that unit's revenue is then contributing to my ability to grow the business more. And one of the things along with that is always looking at kind of the run out, right? So based on what we have today, this was something I got taught by the one founder of Vena. He would always say, yeah, we're basically burning through cash. We're growing this business rapidly and over investing in sales, because we can always just stop selling, right? And we have recurring revenue, and then that becomes profit. And so that's something that people often, kind of struggle looking at or analyzing to make those growth decisions. And the challenge there becomes, if you miscalculate, you might be short on cash. Well, there's solutions for that usually that you can get through, especially if it's just a couple of hiccups here and there. But the bigger problem is, if you miscalculate, you might miss a part of that growth. If that growth wave is going like this and you're not tracking along with it, and you miss it, it's really hard to make that ground up later. And so you have to understand what your objectives are, certainly as a business, and how do you want to grow. But that's why I would say, like, focus on those three things above all else.
That's cool. I feel like so much of what you talk about is kind of like manning the ship, right? Like in terms of finance, like you are at the front of where this organization goes, right? Based off of your decisions. And I know that conversations we've had, I think you are very inspirational in calling, finance folks to the front and saying, "Hey, you're more than just this like pencil pushing, number crunching person." Like if someone, who is kind of like looking down on themselves working in finance right now, like what kind of message would you deliver to them?
Yeah. I always encourage, like, you've got to elevate yourself up, because you are the person who can help support those business decisions. Without that kind of finance partnership and finance support, oftentimes, business leaders are left kind of in the lurch, and they're only using instinct, to make decisions, right? And that doesn't usually result in great results every time. And I think about, even something as kind of boring as like capital equipment purchases, like understanding when and how to invest in capital versus maintenance capital. But those are topics that finance people are very familiar with. But oftentimes, like you said, they're just kind of in the back room doing their calculations. And, I always kind of encourage them, you need to get more involved. Go out, in that case, go out in the factory floor, go look at the equipment, go talk to the people who actually run the equipment, understand the use and understand those things. Because the more you can understand about the actual like human factor, the actual like how is this being used in the business, the better you can do at then advising and guiding the business.
Yeah. Can you give us an example maybe from the past when you've kind of had to do that yourself and kind of like really the moment where you're like, "Oh, I'm more than just a person with a calculator. Like I can get involved here."
Yeah. So this was a long time ago at an Oshkosh facility called IMT, Iowa Mold Tooling. So they make some really cool like mechanics trucks and cranes and stuff. And part of the manufacturing process there is like you have piece parts or raw steel, and you put it through what's called a shot blast machine. And it's literally like ball bearing kind of pieces of metal that get shot at high speed on the steel, and it prepares it to be then like welded. So it gets what they call steel scale off of the material. So then you can get a better bond in the weld process. And so we had this shot blast machine at that factory that was like 25 years old or whatever. And Oshkosh said, it's depths of the recession. So it's like, we're not spending money on anything that we don't have to. And they're like, no, you can't get a new shot blast machine. I put together the capital request for that and the ROI and stuff, right? Calculated it out, here you go, denied. And I'm like, huh. So then I was like, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I want to learn more about this. Like, why do we need this new piece of equipment? And so I went out and spent some time out on the factory floor with the operators who run that machine. And I found out this machine is so old that like literally the sides and stuff have holes in it where they're welding on like plates of steel to keep the shot in the machine. And then every time after they run it, they have to take a broom and sweep up all the shot that came out and then put it in. And I'm like, aha, this makes sense. We do need a new one,
It's
right? Like this is
dangerous.
insane. Yeah. And so then, but then that gave me a lot of ideas on how I could reposition that request because I could actually calculate like how much time is being wasted from cleaning up after every run. What is that efficiency loss on the machine versus just simply saying this machine is past its useful life. We need a new one. The new one costs this, so on and so forth. And now the ROI on that decision, it goes through the roof, right? Because we can't manufacture as fast as we should be able to because of the age of that machine. That is now a compelling thing that Oshkosh then immediately approved, right? And they said, yep, no brainer, get the new machine as soon as possible.
And I'm sure those guys like appreciated you. You ever like go out drinking with them
Yeah.
after?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They were so excited because like they'd been trying to get a new machine for years and could never get it approved, right? And that was like one of the first really good examples for me of like there's a term in lean about like the Gemba, which is like go to the work. And that was like a great example and reminder of like how important it is to not just sit in your office, right? But go to where the actual work's being performed. Go observe, see how that stuff's being done because it really gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Even yesterday I was watching some video from Clay when they were talking about marketing spend, and they were, it was a conversation literally with with the finance guy and the marketing guy. Like, hey, we're investing heavily in brand marketing because brand marketing is like an efficiency towards everything, right? Like when we go to do demand, people are familiar with our brand and it like amplifies, how, better our cost per acquisition or whatever. Well, I love that. Like, it seems like finance does need to be in the field hand in hand. And I think for me in my past, like I've kind of viewed finance as like, don't bother them. They're doing their thing. Like only go when you need to like get something approved. But I don't know. I guess the more that I think about it, the more that, it is so important for finance to kind of be in the weeds, or for myself as a marketer to work hand in hand with finance more, right? Like they're my partner to help get things done.
I, I'll say like, and this, like I always pick on marketing because they're, usually just this giant number on the spreadsheet that's like, like what is that even for?
Yeah.
And finance typically, like you said, they typically don't understand. And I will say, like for me, even like working at Planful with you, with Rowan and the marketing team there, that was really the first time that I got super deep into the mechanics and everything around marketing. And I learned so much. And I wish I had known that or had done that earlier in my career because it was fascinating to understand like all of the actual mechanics and thought and stuff that goes into marketing spend. And so like with what we do with Pigment, that's one of the things that we offer clients is a marketing spend application where you can
Cool.
actually track and understand like this investment is yielding this return that's coming back out so that we can help bridge that language of finance and marketing because it's you're absolutely right. It's one of the most misunderstood things for sure, like in business.
Yeah, I mean, I think people think it's just like pretty colors, silly videos, and like people smiling and saying, "Come on in." But it's like literally the fuel for your business. Like, I think for me, like a lot of my experiences in building websites, and now I'm making this change just to like growth marketing. And I'm like, well, because a website is just the vehicle. Like, if you don't have the fuel and you're not giving the vehicle anything, it doesn't go anywhere, right? I don't know. And I think it's just like the growth of that and understanding like the benefit of marketing and what it is and how it can affect any business. I don't know, I love it. Uh, but let's talk a little bit more about you, because you're kind of a crazy guy. You're a little contrarian, I believe. What belief do you hold about business finance that would make most CFOs and CMAs think you're crazy?
I I think this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. Like I definitely am probably much more risk tolerant than most finance people. And I truly believe that if you want to have your business be successful, get ahead, whatever term you want to apply, like it does take a certain degree of risk. And I think that a lot of businesses miss opportunities because traditionally people who sit in like the CFO roles or chief accounting officer, they're typically very risk averse. And I think that results in, especially as businesses grow, it results in a lot of missed opportunity where, weighing that kind of risk and reward, you can place some bets that probably will pay off as long as you've done the right analysis, right? You've done your homework, you've gone to where the work's being performed, and you can show that this is actually a really good risk to take.
Hmm. And now is that primarily like between balancing like revenue growth and cash flow and contribution margins? Like, can you give me an example of kind of like, what would traditionally be good? Hey, this is like safe, and where you're
Mhm.
going, I'm going through the asteroid field. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it does come down to that. It depends on the business, of course. Like if you're in a software business or things, it's a lot of times around headcount, how soon, how fast should we hire? I had an example at Oshkosh where it was even related to just laying people off. We had some pretty crazy downturns in the time that I was there, and I was making the argument that it actually will cost more for us to lay these people off than it would to just keep them on payroll and have them do no work. And that was like an insane view, right? But the data supported it. Unfortunately, they decided not to do that, and then they paid the price because then we had to go rehire people. Most of those people had gone and gotten other jobs, and now we have to train, onboard, and all those costs, right? And that would be an example of where, yeah, it's a risk to take them on because you're believing that the business will come back. But if you don't believe the business is coming back, then why are you doing the business? And so sometimes even decisions like that can be looked at from a very different lens.
Damn, dude, that's so cool. Like to have a finance guy who's like actually, trying to save jobs rather than just cut headcount. Because I feel like it's like the most obvious thing. Oh my gosh, we're going into a downturn. Let's cut headcount, right? Like such a contrarian view to be like, hey, like in the long term, it's going to take us longer to ramp people when things come back, which is going to slow us down, which is, going to slow down our revenue growth or whatever. That's pretty cool that you stood up to the man. But you're no longer really focusing on enterprises, if I'm correct. Or are you guys kind of still focusing small to mid-sized business, or where's your
Yeah,
sweet spot?
like mid market, upper mid market. So 100 million in revenue or higher. We've got a few clients crossing into that billion, several publicly traded clients. So certainly kind of the spectrum.
So for your sweet spot, what is the biggest mistake you see them making repeatedly?
I think honestly the biggest mistake is not engaging with or getting the actual decision makers involved in the process. And this is not new. I mean, this is an age-old problem. Even sometimes it's like, oh, I don't, the license cost is too high or whatever. You know, you have people out making decisions in the business every day, and you're literally withholding the information from them to have them be informed to make better decisions. And with Pigment, we're able to design the experience around those people so they can literally be excited about, some of these people are setting their homepage on their browser. They open their browser, boom, it pops up their board in Pigment. Like, and so that is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes is, that kind of holding things back and not trying to give the business people the right information so that as they make those micro decisions all day, every day, they're always tying it back to the strategy of the company and the financial performance of the company.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like so much of this is it's all relational. Like the software is really meant to kind of, hey, what's the information so that I can work the relationship, right? Like I don't know. I think that's frustrating for me sometimes when you're, going through approvals or making something and someone has to go away to chat with someone else. I'm like, just bring them in the call. Like we can get this done in 5 minutes if we're all together. We don't need to do this like this telephone line. I don't know. I think it's interesting communication. Like AI is accelerating that, If we were to fast forward 10 years, what role does the CMA or CFO play when AI can do most of the analysis?
Again, I think it comes down to that instinct, right? You become kind of the almost like the Sherpas of the business because in theory are, you very much understand the mechanics of the business, how all these pieces relate together, the nuances of the business, and then you're able to take and kind of guide the organization on, yeah, this is what we need to do if this is where we want to end up. And I think it becomes a lot more fun because it provides that time back for finance and accounting professionals to really focus on learning, right? And understanding, researching other companies who've done similar things and getting all that information so that they can truly kind of guide and Serpa the business through the results versus just focusing on churning, analysis and reports and copy paste.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, sir. I think we've got time for like one more question, or
All right.
maybe two. Okay. How about this one? If someone gave you 10 million to start a new venture tomorrow, knowing everything you know now, what problem would you solve? Or what fun would you have?
Let's see. If somebody gave me 10 million, you know, I do love this space. And I think what I would work on is trying to attack the data challenges that exist because I still see that as an area that people just really aren't spending there's not a lot of capital going into solving that. And there's certainly softwares like Glean, for example, that are doing some cool things with like how to connect data from different places, but it's still very clunky, very challenging, and very IT heavy. I would probably try to look at and try to find a way to solve that problem better so that people like you and me who, don't have like super technical, like go write an API kind of knowledge and skill set, we can much more easily bring our data together to do meaningful things with tools like AI.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. And then what question about TwinSix or your work are you hoping someone will finally ask, but they never do?
I think one question is why? Like, why do you love this space so much? I took kind of a total about turn from a path to like CFO to like going in, working on the vendor side, and then now kind of an adjacent about turn to starting a business. And people ask like what we do and that stuff, but very rarely to never do I get asked why do I love this space and why am I so passionate about it?
So why do you love this space and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, it's really simple for me. I truly I love information. Like I'm one of those people, I'm always reading, 2 to 4 books at a time. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I love movies. I love information. And, every morning I do a crossword. I read the news, right? And the reason I love this space and I became so addicted to it is because of that. It feeds that hunger that I have because I get like today. I've already met today. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've already met with 4 different companies that do 4 completely different business models to talk to them about what their challenges are, what problems they have, what they're trying to solve, and that to me is like it's the addiction.
Yeah. Before recording this, my son came to me and he has this like little Lego that was a bicycle Lego. And around it, he had this string tangled up. And for me, I'm like, honestly, I like untangling
Yeah,
things. It's kind of
untying
fun.
knots, like yeah,
Untying knots, you're just like wild. But I assume that it's kind of the same feeling with like complex financial data. It's like there's this tangled mess and you get to sit there and like untangle it. And like it's kind of cool when it comes together and it's all clean and then, the work is never done, right? It's like I think that's why I named this the cadence. It's like every year it's a cycle, right? Like we're just going through this common cadence of like making messes, cleaning up messes, like redefining where we're going to go, and then we're going to make a mess again and do it all over. So, hey
exactly.
man, thank you so much for joining. This was awesome. I really loved having you on the podcast. Hope to do it again.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Jason.
Is there anything else that you want the audience to say to know about you or TwinSix before we leave?
No, I mean, if you're if you work in a business and you think about all that manual time and effort that you probably spend just getting basic answers to stuff, let us know. Reach out. I'm sure we can help you. And if it's not with pigment, we'll certainly point you in the right direction.
Well, thanks again, sir. Have a lovely day, and we'll speak soon.
Cool. See you, Jason. Bye.
See you, man.